The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and don't necessarily reflect the views of WOWT.
Here we are once again with another episode of Becca's Talking. I'm really looking forward to today's podcast. And by the way, Don Bacon is my guest. And I want to start off just by saying that over the years, we've known each other, a little 10 years or so.
Remember first interviewing with you on 2015.
Yeah, when you first announced. And over the years, we've had some interesting conversations, and they haven't always been pleasant. You haven't always liked some of my questions, and you haven't always agreed with me. But you've always been willing to come and have a dialogue, and you've always been willing to come and talk to the constituents. And, even if we don't agree, I respect that, because too many politicians, both our governor and then Senator Ricketts and Senator Fisher are a little bit tougher to get a hold of, to get a conversation like this. So I'm not sure you don't like all the questions I asked today, but I do think that...
I think it helped. I was a newspaper editor at college. I respect the media. And I was General Petraeus's public affairs officer in Iraq, so I probably have some bad training.
Even on that end of it too. Then, well, let's talk about one of the things I want to talk to you about is that you are, have always promoted the fact that you are one of the most bipartisan members of Congress. And I've always said, well, if nobody else is trying, that's easy to get. But but you actually put together a bipartisan proposal to try to get the government back up and running. Well, what are you suggesting?
Well, I'll give the details up front, and then I'll maybe back it up and how we got there. One of the core issues that the Democrats say they have on the shutdown is they want the COVID-era ACA tax credits to be extended. And they were put in 2021, and they have significantly reduced premiums for people. There is no doubt about that. And these aren't the tax credits that were in the ACA bill itself from President Obama. Those are permanent. These are the temporary ones that were supposed to expire December 31st. Most Republicans also don't want to see them just expire, though they don't want just a clean extension either. So I think so there's fertile ground here for discussion in my mind. But what we proposed was, and this was with Tom Suozzi, a friend of mine from New York, Josh Gottheimer, Democrat from New Jersey, and then Republican Jeff Hurd, who's a outstanding new guy in Congress. This guy's got, I think he's going to be an impressive representative as time goes on. He's new, but he's in a safe district, but he does a lot of what I call independent thinking, in my view. So, but he was the Republican to join me. There's a lot more who support it, but I didn't want to wait. I got 2 and 2. I wanted to put it out. But what we did is we said, hey, there's going to be some kind of income cap on this, because right now you can earn $600,000 and get these ACA COVID-era tax credits. We think it probably should be capped, and I think $200,000. There's been some discussion, maybe higher for a family. We'll let the appropriators sort that out. But we put out there as a marker, $200,000, and also that the tax credits go directly to lowering people's premiums. What we're seeing is a lot of this COVID-era tax credits, they're big checks to companies right now to help pay their insurance that way. I want to make sure it really goes to individuals and lowers their premiums. And the Democrats said, well, we don't want just a 1-year thing. We want at least a 2-year thing. I said, okay, we could do that. And so that's how we got the 3 main points on there. And I happen to know that John Thune does not like this. You could have $600,000 to get these. I also know he wants it to go to individuals. So I've done a good enough listening to know what I propose is in a sweet spot for a lot of people. So I think a majority of Republicans will like it. I think a majority of Democrats will like it.
And as I understand it, it does seem like something that, should be agreeable to a lot of people. But you got to get it before the Congress in the first place. And the Congress is not in session. You've got, the Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson, shows no indication of wanting to call you guys back anytime soon. There's been theories that that's partly because they don't want the Epstein files to be released. That's not part of it.
It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
So, but if you do it this week or next week, it's going to happen. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I agree. And it'd be nice to have it happen sooner. But anyway, so still haven't called you back in. So you put this out there, and even if you did it pass, is there any indication that Trump would even be willing to sign it? Have you had any conversation with the White House on this proposal?
I haven't personally, and that's what one of the Democrats are saying. But here's the whole shortcoming in their thinking. You got to get 60 votes in the Senate anyway for an appropriations bill that this will be in. So if our proposal or nothing like it's in there, the Democrats aren't going to vote for the appropriations bill, and that's really where the Democrats should have shut the government down, or this is where they should have had the fight on the appropriations bill, not a CR. Because in the end, we got to have the right language in the appropriations bill, and if the president vetoes it, you go into a shutdown again. I mean, because this is for the appropriations process.
Okay, so for people that don't understand, and me being one of them, I think, you say a clean CR, continuing resolution. Well, if you have a clean CR, wouldn't that continue the COVID era ACA?
It would for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, as long as the CR is in fact. But we want to get something a little more permanent. So do the Democrats, and so they wanted to have sort of my language in the CR, and this whole debate goes back to President Obama. President Obama said he would never debate over a clean CR. It's going to be a clean CR or nothing. And so we were on the losing end of some of those debates with President Obama, but that became the standard. I think the Democrats need to have assurances that Republicans are willing to put this in the appropriations bill. That's why I put it out there, put it out as a proposal. And you don't have to have the chamber open to do that. Right now, the Appropriations Committee, they could, I made this deal when I was here, and the other guy was in New York, one's in New Jersey, one's in Colorado. So all these negotiations can continue where we're at. And they're doing it right now. The Senate is in session. And ultimately, we got to get 60 votes in the Senate. And this is why this proposal, I think, is important, because if it's in the appropriations bill and you get 60 Democrats on it, then we solve the problem, or 60 senators.
Why do things have to be this difficult? I mean, it seems to me that we're supposed to elect, good, upstanding, intelligent men and women, and then you get in Congress, you get into a Senate, and it seems like you become spoiled little petulant children.
Well, it's a lot of shirts versus skins mindset right now. I don't think it works for the country. But if you're on the shirt side, the thought is you better support your team no matter what, and condemn the other team no matter what. And if you're on the skin side, same thing. But it don't work. So what's going on here? First of all, if you back up, I think the real issue we're having the shutdown was that President Trump did the pocket rescissions. This is an appropriations bill that both House and Senate passed. The President Biden signed. Then the President Trump comes in and says we're not going to spend this money that was appropriated. And the Supreme Court ruled in his favor because it was all national security related. If it was been anything else, they said they would not have agreed to it. I disagree with that. But I think the Democrats' perspective is no matter what we do, the president could just do a pocket rescission or not spend. And I think this is why this shutdown's been so intractable. I think that's the root cause of the Democrats not wanting to meet in the middle right now. So what we're having is the Republicans are saying, hey, we will agree to some tax credit stuff, but we got to open up first before we have the negotiation. The Democrats are saying, well, we're not going to open up unless we have the negotiation. It's like a playground fight.
Yeah, it is.
That's why I proposed it. I said, let's negotiate. We don't have to put it in the CR, but it's going to have to go in the appropriations bill.
But you told me when you and I were talking about this before the podcast a while back, you said that this proposal is to keep leadership out of it. Because Johnson and Thune and that, they along with Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, that ends up getting all messed up when you get the leadership involved.
Why I said that to you, if I called the speaker and said, I want to do this proposal, okay, I'm going to wait 3 or 4 days. They're not going to really want it. My job was to put this out there, make it part of the discussion, and I don't need to have the speaker's blessing to put out a proposal, but that I know that he's not going to be opposed to. Neither is Hakeem Jeffries. So here's the words that came back from Axios reporter. He said he talked to all the leadership, and they said none of them had anything wrong. They said there was nothing not to like. It was sort of like a double negative. But in other words, it was all right. They liked it.
Uh-huh.
And but I think if I had to work this through the leadership up front, I wanted to throw it out there so people can do this. This is not that hard. And in the end, you got to have this for the appropriations bill, not necessarily the CR. But the Democrats got to know that we want it too. And we do. I don't want to see people's premiums go up in Omaha, right? And it's going to go up a lot.
So and maybe when you're having conversations just there, in D.C. or, when your people are having conversations among themselves, you can have that conversation. But then you get in front of the TV cameras, and not you specifically, but the politicians.
I'm on TV right now.
Yeah. But you get in front of the cameras, and all of a sudden it's like, it's the Democrats' fault. No, it's the Republicans' fault. And it's, everybody's got to meet somewhere in the middle. middle.
My view is the Democrats need a way out. If you're going to say we're going to give you nothing, and we're not going to give you any face-saving measure, we're going to have a shutdown longer. And I think what I'm offering is a face-saving measure that we're willing to. I want them to know most Republicans want a deal on COVID. Now, here's the problem. I brought this up back in August. I've had this plan for a while, by the way. A lot of Democrats said, no, we want just a totally clean extension. I said, well, you're going to have a hard time getting Republicans on board saying, hey, if you're earning $600,000, you're going to get these tax credits. I think there's got to be some kind of income cap. But after a 5-week shutdown, everybody's more amenable now on this. So I think but what I offered was what this past week. So what I offered in August. And I didn't have any traction. So I'm not a Johnny-come-lately on this idea. I've been working it behind the scenes, but now I think it's prime time.
So many other things to talk about going on. Okay. What is going on right now with ICE? What I see happening here are these masked men that are abusing their power. We got the Cornhusker clink here, which is just so much for being Nebraska nice. It's hurting our farmers. It's hurting our ag industry. It's hurting the hospitality industry. It's hurting roofing and construction. I mean, what's going on right now is not benefiting America.
Yep.
Why have the House and Senate just sort of laid down on all of this and let the president just have his way?
Well, a little bit of my own personal perspective. I've been so focused on tariffs, Ukraine, Canada, Greenland, a few other things that it's, I only have so much bandwidth to really bore in on a topic. So I'd just being where I come from. Now, that said, I do think that the president got elected for 2 reasons. One of them was the border, not necessarily the folks who are here illegally right now, but the border was broke and he's fixed it. I think he should declare victory and say, now it's time to do immigration reform. I do think most Americans do not want violent people here. We've found gang members and there's criminals and there's been murders. I think that the folks will welcome ICE to deal with the violent element that was here. But I also know that the lion's share of people here are just trying to get a job and work. And we have people here who have been working 3 years, 4 years, whatever, and otherwise are legal. I think the president's misreading his mandate on going after those people. And you can see it in the polling. The polling initially had him in the 50s on this issue. Now he's in the 30s. Why? Because they're seeing what's going on with ICE. And so I've talked to high-level members of his administration saying, you're hurting yourselves because the perception is you're going after grandma, not the gangster. But obviously, and some of these guys live in a bubble, and they're like, they live in a bubble where everybody sort of reassures they're doing something right. It was all like foreign news to this leader. If I said his name, you would know it. I prefer to not. I mean, it was a private meeting, but they were like sort of shocked because it wasn't just me. There was like 10 of us, and they're saying you're hurting us for the midterms. You're hurting the president's image by going after people that otherwise are legal outside of the undocumented part. But people are all good about the violent people, but you're going after what is perceived to be not violent people and grandmas and grandpas and things like that, breaking up families. And so there was feedback given to them. But in the end, Congress has to pass legislation to fix this because ICE is enforcing the law. That's the bottom line. Now, they don't have to wear masks and they don't have to be thugs about it, but they're enforcing the law. So I'm on this bill called the Dignity Act.
I want to ask you, are they really enforcing the law? They're not coming in there with arrest warrants, right? The Supreme Court has said that it's okay for them to just get somebody because they look Hispanic, right? I mean, is that really enforcing the law?
I would say they're trying to enforce the law. I'm not saying they're doing it like if the police did it in that way. I think there'd be tons of pushback if the military acted that way. So I don't know that we have a lot of history with ICE in this regard. But I would say just on the top line, they're enforcing the law that's on the books. I'm not saying that the tactics are the best or anything like that. But for that ICE agent, they're out there trying to enforce the law. Congress has to change the law. And so that's why I'm on the Dignity Act that says, hey, if you've been working for 3 years, but although you're here illegally, we're going to give you a permanent status. You're not going to get deported. You're not going to become a citizen either, but you're going to have a legal status and your family, so you don't have to worry. So, and it also opens up the asylum, capabilities. and it's Maria Salazar's bill, if you want to look it up, the Dignity Act. It would be the first major, I would say, legal immigration reform since Ronald Reagan. And I think it's ready. It's prime time because the border is not the problem anymore.
10 years ago, when you and I were talking, 10 years ago, when you were just a candidate, you were talking about these issues. You were talking about doing something for the Dreamers. You were talking about these issues.
I've always been on the Dreamers bill.
I know you have been, but nothing's ever happened.
Yep, and mainly the excuse has been, and I'll say in our party, I'm not the Democrats want their problem is they've always gone in and like on bills and demanded 100%. You're not going to get that. But sit down at the table, let's negotiate. I think there's things we could have done if it was Dreamer alone. I also think TPS is a no-brainer for most Republicans. If they know the problem, it's not a hard problem. A lot of it's vague to some people. But to me, this was not a hard issue. But the Republican excuse has been, we're not going to do anything until the border's fixed. The border's fixed.
But you know what? Yeah. And again, years of doing talk radio, I would ask these politicians, I would say, okay, the border wants to be fixed. What's the number? Because it's never going to be zero. Yeah. It's never going to be zero. So what's the number? And they would never give me a number because
double digits a day is fixed. It was 12,000.
But they would never give me a number because they always wanted to go with that vague. Yeah. Oh, hey, when the border's fixed. Well, that could last forever.
There's the activists in our party. Some of them, I don't want to say all of them, are anti even legal immigration reform. But that's not where the vast majority of the voters are at. Vast majority of the voters, I think, are common sense. They want a secure border. They want legal immigration. We know that we got to grow our economy. And if you had zero immigration, we'd have a declining population, which is bad on our economy, bad on Social Security, bad on Medicaid. I think common sense people can navigate their way. But the base on our side, I'd say the base on the Democrats got their own issues. But on our side, they're like, we don't want any kind of reform on legal immigration, not alone illegal immigration. And it's and a lot of our representatives fear that. But I've always felt a little different. I'll give you an example. DACA. That poll is 70% in our district.
Yeah.
But now, granted, the 30% is largely on the Republican side, so there's a little risk there. But when are you wrong supporting a 70% issue?
You're not.
I think it's the right thing to do.
But tell that to Governor Pillow when we talk about medical marijuana, okay?
I think medical marijuana is, I think that's an area that a lot of us agree on. It's the recreational side that's taboo. But yeah, medical marijuana, it's a different story.
Okay. One more thing. This is my opinion here, and then we'll move on to other topics. You talked about immigration and everything, and the Republican view on it, so many Republican views. I think Stephen Miller looks like a Batman villain. I mean, that guy just looks evil, and that's why I said this is my opinion. Not going to bring you into this.
We make a little bit of fun of him.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I'll leave it at that.
I'm sure he got that a lot in high school as well. Okay. Right now, the military is bombing these ships in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, they're all bringing drugs into the country. You talk about doing things legally. There's no evidence of that. There's no due process. And quite honestly, smuggling drugs is not a capital offense. Mm-hmm. How can this happen? And why isn't Congress trying to stop this?
Well, I'm on a letter with Seth Moulton yesterday. It's public today. And a few others, but Seth Moulton and I were the ones who worked on it, asking the administration or demanding, demanding the exact word, individual branches, so take it for what it's worth. But we want to know the legal basis for doing this. We also want to know the intelligence. And now there was some briefings given to the Armed Services Committee, but nobody's there right now. So, I mean, I couldn't hear it. Mm-hmm. But there was some information given by the administration on it. But here's my thought. And by the way, it's though it may not be a capital offense, 100,000 people a year are dying from this stuff. And I've lost younger brothers from drugs and alcohol. So I think the president, there's two steps. Have you identified the right problem? Do you have the right fix? I think he's identified the right problem when you're losing 100,000 people a year. But I don't think the fix that he's doing, it could be critiqued. I mean, he needs to come to Congress. It's one thing to hit a boat and say, okay, we're done. But if you're going to do continued operations, by definition, you need congressional approval or authorization. He has to come to Congress if he's going to continue doing these operations. Mm-hmm. And what we want to hear is what is the legal basis and how do we know that your intelligence, we want assurance that the intelligence is accurate. So that's what we're asking for. The president, I think, has to come if they want to do continued operations to get authorities.
Maybe instead of spending money on those bombs and the military activity to take out these ships, maybe they spent money on mental health problems and rehab. Might be able to save some of those lives.
Yeah, I think all of the above, frankly. I'm not opposed to taking military action on somebody that's killing 100,000 Americans a year. But you got to come to Congress. You got to tell us the legal basis and give us the intelligence. And if you don't, it's not illegal. You don't have authority, right? Now, that there's some debates between the two branches of government who has what, but the War Powers Act, which has withstood the test of time, continued operations, you have to get approval.
You mentioned tariffs. The Supreme Court had the hearings, and by the questioning, it appears that even the conservative members of the Supreme Court are saying the president does not have this authority. I'm assuming that you feel the same way, that he doesn't have this authority. And if the Supreme Court rules that he doesn't, what happens then?
I think I was the first Republican to come out against tariffs. I would say a lot of people behind the scenes would agree with me. And the president ran on it. I told people I didn't run on it. And I'm a free trader. I'm a Milton Friedman guy. By the way, Republicans haven't supported tariffs since the 1930s. How did we get to become the party of tariffs? I don't know. But Trump has believed in it since the 80s, and it's his dogma. He ran on it. I don't think he won on it. I think he won on it because of the border and inflation. But somehow we got this in the mix as well. I think tariffs have proven not to work historically. And so I've been opposed to it. I could see if you have unfair trade, there should be some role for tariffs to say, hey, you're treating us unfairly. But that's not what's happening here. We're putting tariffs on 80 countries.
Yeah.
Tariffs on countries we had a trade surplus with. And so I think the Supreme Court should rightfully be cynical. I'm looking forward to seeing the ruling. I hope that they reestablish tariffs as an Article 1 authority, because it is. We did pass a bill in the 70s that they're using, saying the president has the emergency authorities for tariffs, but I think most people would say he's trying to do tariff policy, not emergency responses, right? So I think the Supreme Court will shrink that authority down. I hope it's a total wipe,
so then
but we'll see.
Would Congress then have to appropriate the money going back to these corporations? Would Congress keep the money?
Yeah,
what happens?
I'm not sure about what the billions of dollars been collected. Here's the funny thing is you always got to think before you talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
The president keeps bragging how much money it's bringing in, but it's that very logic that makes it unconstitutional, because Congress directs what the money and the taxation. So all the words he's used about how much money's coming in was used against him yesterday in the Supreme Court.
Right.
Now, if he said, I need this to ensure we have fair trade, that gives him a little more authority, because he has the authority to negotiate trade deals. Of course, we're supposed to sign off on them. That if he would have used that argument all along, he would have had more credibility yesterday. But the fact that he's been talking about how much revenue it's bringing in, all the justice, that's Article 1, not Article 2.
Venezuela. Why do we hate them?
Well, we should not like Maduro or the previous leader Chavez. I mean, the third richest country in the world is now the poorest in South America, and they're terrible for its people. There's no reason to go to war with them, though. But they're a mini Cuba. They're not our friends. But that's no reason.
We're not bombing Cuba.
No. Yeah, there's no sense of hostility. There should be no reason for hostilities with Venezuela. To your point.
Yeah. Okay. So going to war, you are as a retired general, you're not for going to war with Venezuela.
Well, I don't know any reason why. Now, granted, they're bad people. They're mini Cuba. I think there's nothing to like there, but there's no reason to go to war.
I know time is running out here. I know you got other things I got to do, but I appreciate your time here on this. The Republicans blame the Democrats, and I think rightfully so, about the way they hid Joe Biden's diminished mental capacity. But then when I see the president putting out things like artificial intelligence of him on a fighter plane dumping crap on the American people, I have to wonder about his mental stability. Are the Republicans doing to Trump what the Democrats did with Biden?
Well, there was no doubt that I think President Biden and the debate showed it. I'll just quote Mitch McConnell. Father time always wins in the end, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it showed on Joe Biden. I don't relish in it, but I think he hurt his party by continuing to go through the primary process, and then after the primaries decide he's not going to run again. I don't think you can say that President Trump as senile. I think you can say it's a judgment issue on some of the stuff. He thinks it's funny, and I think the base loves it. Some of the base. I think it's not presidential, and so I think it's more of a judgment. And I don't always agree with the judgment.
After the election Tuesday, President Trump told the senators, Republican senators, that the Democrats did so well because A, he wasn't on the ticket, and B, because people were tired of the shutdown. And I agree with him on both those things. Now, which then begs the question, though.
I don't.
Well, okay, well, why don't you then?
I think he was on the ticket.
Oh, he was on the ticket, but yeah. Okay, I agree with you on that.
Because he's polling in the low 40s. Well, and the economy's polling in the 30s. That's what people are voting.
That's sort of where my question goes. Yeah. Can a Republican like you, the old school Republican, you're wearing a Reagan Bush vest, it was a vintage Reagan Bush vest from '84. Can someone like you actually win? I mean, maybe locally you can, but on a national level, win without that MAGA base, and vice versa. Can the MAGA base win on the national level all on its own?
Well, I think one of the good developments this week was the conservatives like me calling out Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, Steve Bannon. I think we have like a 90-10 problem on anti-Semitism. I mean, most of us like Israel. Most of us are very pro-Jewish. But there's this element, I think it's small. That's why I call it 90-10. I really don't know if it's 92-8 or whatever. But we don't want the 10%, right? And so I think there was a real passionate debate in the last week or two where conservatives says these guys are not welcome. They do not represent what we want. And I got to tell you, the Democrats got an issue here. They got Mom Donnie that is very anti-Israel. I debate about the anti-Jewish thing, but there's a whole element out there in our college campuses. I think the Democrats are much more divided on this. But I think we had a good debate this week internally in the Republican Party. We don't want you, Nick Fuentes. You're not a Republican. Tucker, you're platforming this guy, and you're an anti-Israel, anti-Ukraine guy, pro-Putin. Don't want you either, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that was good. Now back to the election.
But okay, you can kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
Do you win then?
Well, I'd rather have a smaller party that doesn't have racists or anti-Semites. I mean, there's no place for that. I can have a disagreement on tariffs. I can have a disagreement on some things. That's all right. But I don't think there's any room for people like Nick Fuentes in the Republican Party. I don't want him. He would be never welcome in anything I ever do. And frankly, I feel that way about Tucker and Steve Bannon as well, though they're not quite as toxic as Fuentes, Nick Fuentes. But on the elections, the president blamed the shutdown mistake because now he just took credit for the shutdown. When after all, every vote, the Democrats were voting not to open it. So I think he hurt us in a debate, for one. And he's trying to blame the shutdown when polling shows it's pretty evenly split who's blaming who on this thing. The real issue is they don't like the economy right now, which is tariff has created this turbulence. And we're not moving forward on the economy. We're not really going backwards, but we're seeing some bad numbers right now on jobs. Today we saw a lot of companies are doing higher firings than we've seen in a long time, or layoffs. But those swing voters were like, we don't like what we see. And that falls on President Trump. That's the core issue. He didn't want to admit that. He talks about it's a shutdown, but really he was on the ballot in Virginia. And a lot of Republicans would say, well, we expected to lose Virginia. We expected to lose New Jersey. Yeah, the margins of victory were huge and nothing like we've seen in a long time in both states, even though they're Democrat. That should be a red flag that, and it's the economy's primary thing. Tariffs are not helping out the economy. I also don't think people like the chaos and the sort of the World War III mindset, how to treat your opponents. And I think that's what people reflected in their vote this Tuesday.
I thoroughly agree with you on that. You're not running for re-election. So what's next for you? I had somebody in the office today, somebody in the studio today, say that they thought that you might run for president.
I didn't think I was going to run for Congress when I retired out of the military. And literally the day I retired, I got invited to speak for Lee Terry. And then a week later, he lost. And suddenly, I always have a plan, but then God has a plan that trumps my plan for sure. And so I am interested in national politics. I've been a Reagan guy since I was 13. This is what I did in college. I've been a 30-year Air Force guy. My passion's there. And I would like to. My plan is to help out candidates I like Brian Kemp, Glenn Youngkin from Virginia, Nikki Haley. I would like to see someone like that in the White House down the road, and I'd love to serve on their teams. That would be my going in plan. But I'm taking more and more leadership role in the Reagan caucuses and the judicial Republican venues, because I do think I want to fight for the soul of our party. I don't want us to be the protectionist party. I don't think we should be weak on Putin, right? And I think we should stand by our allies like Israel. These are fundamental things to me, and I want to win that debate within our party. I also would like to work here in Omaha and come home at night. I've been for 10 years roughly, working 4 days a week in D.C. I got all my grandkids within 10 minutes of my house. So, I mean, there's that calling to me. And frankly, Jared Golden said it yesterday, winning doesn't sound good right now. And I mean, if I ran this next election and I look forward to what it would mean to win, I don't like what I see. I don't like the whole environment in D.C. right now is a bit toxic. I don't relish winning Congress right now. And if that's the case, I should let somebody else run.
Okay. Real quick, the shutdown, when does it get resolved? Look at your crystal ball. When does it get resolved?
John Thune thinks it'll be resolved this week, late this week. Hey, we're canceling flights. That's serious. 1.4 million federal employees without paychecks. The only military got paid by fancy bookkeeping, but otherwise, the next pay period, they're not going to get paid. There's so much stuff going bad right now in the shutdown that people need to vote for the clean CR. But I think the Republicans have to give them a face-saving measure by putting out something like I did and saying this is the way forward in the appropriations bill. But I hope it will be this week. And John Thune says he's seeing promising discussions right now. And I happen to know that my proposal is being talked about this morning.
All right. You mentioned getting paid. You say you're not taking your salary. You're not taking your salary. But congressional staff, Senate and Congress,
they're not getting paid.
So the staffs aren't getting paid either?
Nope.
Okay.
So I had to buy pizza the other night and treat everybody. But here's the thing is we've always said.
And was it good pizza? Did he buy? Was it good pizza? Okay, not the cheap stuff. It wasn't like just a Giordino in the microwave sort of thing. No. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I've always put in if nobody else is getting paid, I should get paid. But this is the first time in a while where we actually went across a pay period. So I got notified last Thursday saying, you don't have a choice. You got to get paid. And so I said, really? Because I said, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
But needless to say, on Monday or Tuesday, I was not paid. So I guess the proof of the pudding was no money got put in my account.
I will end this the way I started this. I do appreciate you've always been, not only with me, but the media in general, responsive, and I do appreciate that. We need more of that in Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, and have more long-term dialogue like this and not just the 8-second soundbite.
I think it's important for our constituents to see us engaged and hearing, I'm not hearing that hopefully I've thought through the issues, I've thought through it, whether you agree or not. But I think it's important to have this dialogue. And our 700,000 constituents here need to see that dialogue.
Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to like the Becca's Talking Facebook page. And make sure you join us every week for another podcast on the Becca's Talking podcast. Bye, y'all.